Johar. My name is Archana Soreng, and on this day last year 2019 14th October, I had been to United Nations headquarters Geneva, Switzerland, wherein I participated in the 66th session on Committee of Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, a day of general discussion on land and international covenant on economic, social and cultural rights. I participated there as the only indigenous youth from India and was also selected amongst the 7 indigenous grantees who made oral as well as written intervention in the session. So here's presenting few of my clips of my intervention in the session.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, it gives me great pleasure to open this session of our day of general discussion on land obligations in the context of the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights.
And now I would like to give the floor to Ariana Soeng, if they're in the room. It seems not. Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, committee, for giving us this opportunity. So I come from India and I'm representing the Youth Indigenous Representative of India, and I come from Schedule 5 area as per the Indian Constitution. So as per the issue paper issued to us, so first of all I would like to talk about investment on lands of the indigenous people. I would like to say, when we talk about investment for whom, by whom and for what needs to be considered and needs to be reflected when we talk about investment in indigenous people's land. Because when these investments are done, we need to see whether these investments have sustainable benefits to the indigenous people, and if the answer is no, that the investment has no sustainable benefits of or to the indigenous people, we feel the investment should not be done in the land of indigenous people, because definitely there is provision of compensation, but neither is the compensation being implemented, nor are the people getting the full compensation, even if at some places people are getting. Moreover, when we talk about compensation, people are getting money and jobs, which is again not sustainable when we talk about compensation, because it is compensated on an land which is not a commodity, rather their identity and their existence. So when we talk about investment, there should be free, prior and informed consent taken of the people. And when I talk about consent, it is very important that it is actual consent taken from the people and not duplicity, because most often in my area it is seen people are asked to sign on papers and they are not told what is the content of the paper. Moreover, people are also told different reasons to sign on a paper, so that it is very important to have actual consent of the people and taking into consideration the tribal worldview or the indigenous people's worldview. When we talk about land titling programs, it has been seen that the land titling programs have turned out to be land distribution schemes and not recognizing the real worth of land, what it means to the indigenous people. It has also been seen that in terms of titling programs, there has been partial recognition of the land. When I talk about partial recognition, which means people had applied for land, but they have received small or very minimum amount of land as per what they had applied. And also administration fails to register the cultivation which people are doing in terms of sustainable fallow rotational practices. Thus, when we talk about titling programs, the main bottlenecks which turns out to be is the mindset, understanding and will of the implementers. This is the major bottleneck when we talk about the land titling programs. Now, when we come up to the customary tenure of indigenous people, there has been a contradictory between what is customary area for an indigenous people and community and what is there in the government records. Customary tenure is very important for us, for our existence and for our identity, but at the same time, recognition of customary form of tenure also deprives the indigenous communities from their traditional customary area, as there is difference in the understanding and demarcation of this customary area between the tribal worldview and the government records. Thus, it is very important not only to involve one or few people, but entire community has to be involved when the demarcation of customary boundary is taking place. And when we talk about joint titling or joint title for men and women, we do in India have Forest Rights Act 2006, which for the first time talked about joint titling of men and women. But then the challenge remains in implementation. Forest Rights Act came in 2006. It's now 2019, but the irony is that the implementation is very poor. So in terms of, as I conclude, the recommendation for the committee is that strengthening decentralization and democratization of the processes involved in terms of recognition of land rights, strengthening community participation, and also enhancing the capacity of the people, protecting the human rights of the people by recognizing their land, and most importantly, to understand the worldview of the tribals from their perspective rather than imposing the development perspective and the perspective of land from another worldview. Thank you so much.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. Soring, for emphasizing the need to take seriously this notion of consent in the requirement of free, prior and informed consent, for noting the problems associated with titling given the way it is applied by some land administration authorities, and the challenge of demarcating customary land, as well as the promising but not always fully implemented Forest Rights Act of 2006, which indeed, when it was adopted, was a beacon of hope for many people working in this area.
Then I will continue with Archana Soreng, the Indigenous Fellow from India. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, committee, for giving me this opportunity to present in this session as well. So when we talk about indigenous people, so I am from Khadiya community and I belong to Sundargarh district of Odisha. So as per Indian Constitution, Sundargarh district was declared as scheduled district and also a scheduled district under the scheduled area of Indian Constitution. So what does Indian scheduled area of Indian Constitution says? So it says that an area can be termed as scheduled area only when there are greater number of tribal population. So my district has or had greater number of tribal population, and thus it was able to avail all the provisions for the tribal peoples under Indian Constitution. But there has been greater investment in my districts in terms of industry, in terms of setting up industries, and because of land investments, there has been mixed population, which earlier it wasn't. And because of mixed population, which has happened because of investment over the years, now, as per the 2011 census of India, Sundargarh district has a population of 50.7%. Now, our fear is, if in the coming year, if this 50.7% decreases to 49%, we will lose all the facilities and provisions for the indigenous and the tribal communities under Indian Constitution, which are PESA Act, Forest Rights Acts, which are there to protect our rights. And this situation has come because of investments, and this leads to migration, displacement, and entry of new population in the area. And this questions our existence, our access to rights. Thus, I want to reiterate that land rights, it's not mere recognition of rights to an indigenous community, but also it has lots of repercussion when we plan, when we draft an act. Because no doubt we have Forest Right Act, we have PESA Act, which protects our land rights. But when we ourselves will not be treated as a Schedule 5 area because of investment and because of coming in of new population, all that provisions will remain as a provision and we won't be able to avail it. Thus, on internal level, what is happening because of land investment is that our community, that is the Khadia community which I belong, is invisibly forced to practice the cultural elements of the mainstream, which has impacted the arena of clothing, food habits, rituals, songs, dance, and the belief systems of our community, which very well comes under the economic, social, and cultural rights of this international covenant. We have been very often treated and compelled to feel that our tribe is inferior and have to follow the modernized world. And this is because of mere non-recognition, deprivation, and loss of our land rights, as land is our identity and core essence of the life of indigenous people. And continuing with the last session, which I had to say, is that we do talk about distress sale of land, but earlier what we used to see that indigenous people had the practice of money lending, but now banks came in. But even now there is the practice of money lending and the exploitation associated with it. My intervention or recommendation is that unless and until there is an alternative which is more accessible and which simplifies money lending business, people won't be able to go to bank because it is very complicated process and our people are illiterate, and also it is very far away from the villages. Coming on to that point, I would say if financial aids are given to our people, then the social security and the distress cell will be reduced. But when I talk about financial aid, there are many financial aid by the governments. I request there is a merge of all this financial aid so that the people, those who have land rights from its very initiation, are able to get this, all the financial aid, which is basically the money lending is because of money crisis management, which happens because of health, education and marriage. And lastly, in the issue paper it was written that if you can suggest an area in which the committee can study, I welcome the committee to come and do a study in my area to know the essence of land rights and how the violation of human rights is taking place. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Soreng. And we have now 4 more speakers, and I have to remind you to be short. I know how difficult it is, because given your experiences, which you really have to tell, and they are telling us also so much, you are learning from Orissa. I think we're learning what are the processes which happens and how difficult it can be for you when you fell under this limit, for example, of 50%. What does it mean for all your life circumstances? Thanks for giving us these examples.